Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome inside to League Unlock. Eric and Mark with you guys today, and the LCS finally came and went. Week 1 behind us, which means it's time to do all the recap action from the debut weekend for the North American League Championship Series, even though that's not what it's called anymore. Not North American, but so many roster moves came into this year, and after week 1, it looks pretty much what you'd expect. Team Liquid looked like far and away the most dominant team. So, Mark, are you taking Liquid or the field? 9 other teams to win the spring split.
Well, of course, this is an important question to ask after 1 week of
everything's decided.
Regular season action. But hey, leading into week 1, everything was telling you that it's going to come down to Team Liquid and someone else from North America will be in that finals. And right now, I'm feeling pretty good if I'm taking Liquid, no matter who it's going to be. This was a good start for Team Liquid to pick off the spring split. Getting ahead of myself here. But when you do think about, okay, what was Team Liquid going to show us this very first week? A lot of people have been expecting, and given the changes that they've been made, was that you were expecting them to have a bit of a rough start here, maybe to look like there's some miscommunication. And yes, their performance was not perfect in their matches. They certainly looked a clear cut above some of these teams. And hey, the teams that they're playing against are all teams that people would expect to be pushing towards that playoff spot. So it absolutely looks right out of the gates here. Team Liquid has to be your number 1.
And obviously they were the big preseason favorites. They were number 1 on pretty much every single power ranking, including ours, that you could find, because this roster looks like one of, if not the most stacked roster that the LCS has ever seen. So yeah, there's going to be some huge expectations. It sounds like they're absolutely smashing scrims, and a lot of the coaching staff and team are already talking about and preparing for MSI. So you're probably actually with a safer bet to take them versus the rest of the team.
And hey, the last thing that any of these other teams in the LCS needed to be doing is leaving power picks up and open for Team Liquid to draft. You can't be leaving the Cassiopeia up. No way is that should be allowed to happen, let alone against a Team Liquid. Can't be going on. Team Liquid getting too many advantages.
Yeah, Cassio pretty much perma-banned across every region. Another team that had a lot of hype coming into this split was TSM, with a lot of roster changes, more than you initially thought, because Greg is out with the wrist injury. So Acadian starting in week 1, and Acadian and BrokenBlade, 2 of the new members on TSM, actually looked pretty rock solid in this week. They actually had early game proactivity, and BrokenBlade is solo killing Ssumday and Huni. What's going on?
That was insane, because coming into this weekend, you had thought, okay, yeah, you know what? I am one of these believers in BrokenBlade's talent, and that it will shine through here, even playing last year in a minor region. But when you look at the performances that he had, there's no way anyone could have predicted this. Being able to solo kill the likes of Huni and absolutely dumpstering Ssumday in their matchup in the very first game of the split. What a fantastic start for the new TSM top lane.
And even in the second game against Huni, they had a massive lead against Aatrox. He was solo killing him. Huni was getting camped. Then you have this fight in the mid lane where TSM completely loses everything. But they had this game. The early game, they should have kept snowballing, and then they just kind of stopped playing.
And that's where people want to have some issues, right? Is that this, indecisiveness, falling back type of play style that TSM had last year. They're seeing signs of it again. Look, I've seen a lot more positives from this roster to start off this split than the squad last year showed us. So I'm, feeling a lot more confident about this team and not falling into those same type of traps. Again, you're right. This was a game that they should have had, managed to get this early lead carved out for themselves due to their own skill and outplays, but then just did not keep the pressure onto Clutch Gaming, let them back in, and let them take the game.
I think Zix coming in and the coaching staff change is going to end up being the biggest alteration from this year's TSM as opposed to 2018. And so TSM goes 1-1. They took down 100 Thieves and sent them to 0-2, but Clutch beat them to go 2-0. So Mark, what is the more surprise start to week 1? A 2-0 Clutch Gaming that most people had sitting in the bottom 3 at very best, or an 0-2 100 Thieves squad that most people had top 3.
See, normally you'd be thinking 0-2 100 Thieves all the way, because you had such high expectations for this team. But in all actuality here, watching the games and how it all worked out, I think you have to say that the 2-0 Clutch Gaming seems right given what they could have done. They were this kind of dark horse contender heading into the year, and we saw everything go exactly the way they would want. Maybe not the early game against Team Solo Mid, but getting those type of plays that they could come back right into it, that was necessary for them. And I think that has to be that type of thing. Because when you're looking at the results for 100 Thieves, losing to C9, losing to Team Solo Mid in the fashion that they did.
It's a tough schedule.
It's a tough schedule, but it was a lot of times one or two things kind of going wrong and then just snowballing from there in those solo lanes, which did not allow your key acquisition in Bang in the bottom side with Afromu to really show us what he's got here in North America. It's kind of the tough thing for 100 Thieves is you don't really get to evaluate your biggest off-season move here because, well, he was really just farming the entire time because all of the solo lanes were so far behind when it came to team fights.
100 Thieves went against two top 4 teams, so I'm not too shocked they went 0-2. Clutch, I am surprised. Surprised they took TSM down, and really surprised, not that surprised they beat Echo Fox, but they actually looked really solid. Piglet and Damonte were fantastic. Damonte was so fantastic, in fact, that we are giving him one of our standout performers here for this week. Each week, we're going to go position by position and see who was the standout guy from that position for the week. We got all 5 guys this week, and there were some surprises here for week 1 in North America. BrokenBlade, they didn't go 2-0, but he had 2 fantastic performances against those Ssumday and Huni, which have been the elite of elite when it comes to top laners in NA. Santorin for FlyQuest. FlyQuest also 2-0, by the way, Mark, and they look good.
The crazy thing is when you're looking at those first 2, BrokenBlade, you have to say, in actually the 2 matches that TSM have played, even losing, other than Damonte, which is a totally wild, amazing performance this week.
He didn't die.
BrokenBlade has to be the best performing player in those TSM matches. Great stuff from him, great early start for him. And you're right, Santorin, a fantastic start for FlyQuest, getting this early jump out here, and he is a massive part in any success that they have.
Yeah, Damonte was key in that TSM win for them on the Akali. Everyone's key for their team when they play Akali. And then that bot lane for Team Liquid, just a preview of how they're probably going to dominate North America here in 2019. And for that AD spot, I want to mention we were so close to putting Piglet in there because he was also incredible for Clutch. And he's been, heavily criticized, but he looked great in week 1.
And I think it's a fair criticism given what we've seen over the last, year or 2 from Piglet. But yes, this is one of those times where, hey, if you're going to give someone that criticism, you got to give them that treat when they give you one of these performances. And Piglet gave a fantastic performance throughout this entire weekend, specifically in that TSM game, really stepping up on the Ezreal, dishing out the damage when it needed to be dished out on TSM.
It's only week 1 in NA, so everyone, take a deep breath. There's still 16 games left to play in the regular season. Coming up after the break, we look back at the weekend that was in EU and Fnatic. It might be time to start panicking if you're a fan of the black and gold. Welcome back to the Humble Digs here at League Unlock. Eric and Mark with you guys. Time to recap a little EU action from week 2, and it's only 4 games in, but when you make it to the World Finals in 2018, you do not expect to start the split 0-4, especially with only 1 roster change, but that's exactly what we're looking at Fnatic, and now, week 1, it's fine, whatever, but now you're 0-4. Is it time to start panicking?
And I can't actually decide if it's time to start panicking because, let me tell you, there was good and bad for Fnatic once again. A lot of bad, but hey, I want to say good because this has been the topic that everyone's been talking about when they've been worried about Fnatic, has been the gameplay of Nemesis, Nemesis' actual performance. And I thought Nemesis this week might have been one of the best, if not the best performing Fnatic member this week. And that's saying something because his performance was actually positive. This week was really kind of in the right place at the right time, a lot of times for the team. But you know who's not in the right place at the right time? Pretty much everyone else on Fnatic. It is not working well for this team. And I don't know if that's a symptom of them trying to step up and take on other responsibilities that have maybe been having to shift towards them with Nemesis being, so young or losing caps. These type of things, not 100% clear on. But what I can tell you is that Nemesis' performance has stepped up from week 1, and everyone else's performance needs to match up here if they're going to pick up wins.
When's the last time you saw Reckless die 8 times in a game? Sometimes he would go entire splits with that many deaths. 8 times in that Sivir matchup. It's not time to panic yet, but I'll tell you when it is time to panic. Game 1 of week 3, they play Rogue. If they drop that game and go to 0-5, their next matchup is against Misfits. Then it's officially time to start panicking.
And this is one of those situations where you got to be like, okay, yeah, we can take some time to get into the season here, but into the week 3 matchup here and against Rogue, a team that you have to be able to beat if you want to be making it towards the playoffs, given the indications of what Rogue is right now. You have to be better than them if you have any of these type of aspirations, which we know Fnatic does, and they should with this type of lineup.
You're going to be scared to play Fnatic in the playoffs, regardless of what seed they finish at. Someone else you should be scared of is G2 in any game right now. The meta's perfect for them. They're playing whatever they want. They were speedrunning the LEC, until they matched up against Excel. And Excel put together a fantastic performance. And if Caps, A, isn't playing Akali, and B, doesn't play absolutely out of his mind, they lose that game.
Yeah, I really cannot decide here because you have to acknowledge that a certain part of this win, a certain part of this stellar performance from G2,
from a champion,
is just based on Akali being completely busted. But that bustedness of Akali, you gotta admit here that Caps has a complete control and piloting of this champion that's just completely on another level here, was dipping and dancing through all these team fights.
1v3s, 1v4s.
Dishing out the damage, hitting those stopwatches, getting back into that shroud. It didn't matter. It was a major performance from him and absolutely key here, of course, in this last little fights here, skirmishes in the base to get the Nexus down. Fantastic performance again from G2 Esports, showing us this amazing style that they've been able to have here now with what an offseason they had.
The Yankos bow out of respect for Caps carrying that game. That was a bit of a disrespectful game from G2. I felt like they were just kind of running around assuming you could out-mechanic Excel, and they actually got a huge early game lead, but obviously G2, you make 1 or 2 mistakes, they come back. They're 4-0, they still look like the best team in EU, but that game against Excel was something else. So G2 went 2-0 this week, and 3 other teams joined them there. Vitality, Schalke, and Splice all going 2-0, but which was the most impressive? I'll tell you which one I think. It's Vitality, because they took down Misfits and Fnatic. That's about as tough a schedule as you can get, although apparently Fnatic is a 9th place team. So.
Yeah, hey, it's got to be the Vitality boys here, the performances that they put up, and especially you got to look at that performance that they were able to dish out against the likes of, Misfits here. That was really what you were looking forward to watching.
That was a surprise, too.
That was what you were not expecting. But when you do look at the other 2 teams here, because they deserve their praise here during what they were able to put out these weeks. Splice specifically, you have to look at what that whole roster was able to do. And hey, I gotta bring out all the shout-outs I can for my boy North Scarin down there in the bottom side.
Your boy.
Your boy North Scarin out there with Kobe. I gotta say, that's a developing duo there that I have a lot of faith in moving forward here in EU. I think that they are showing a lot of skill.
Yeah, so Splice took down Origin and Rogue, the easiest schedule of the 3. We talked about Vitality taking down Misfits in pretty convincing fashion, as well as Fnatic, and Schalke beat SK, and they jumped on the beat down Fnatic party as well. So Vitality definitely had the hardest schedule, but Schalke looked super clean in both of their matchups. Their macro so far has been fantastic, and I'm gonna attribute a lot of that to Dylan Falco. I don't know what coaches do within teams a lot of the time, actually, because no one actually knows what strategies they're implementing. But I'm going to assume Schalke's clean macro is a lot due to him.
Yeah, and hey, I was giving that praise over to Kabe and North Scarin down there on the bottom side. But if you're talking about Schalke, you do have to think and give a lot of praise onto the likes of Upset, has been stepping up majorly for this team recently and really showing us all that skill that we know he had last year and putting together this potential here.
Yeah, and if you're looking at our top 5 performers from week 2 in EU, we got exactly that. We got the Schalke bottom lane in there. Upset had a mediocre 35 KDA in week 2. He single-handedly is helping make the Kaisa KDA in EU. She's 6-1 with a 27.3 KDA. A lot of that is from Mr. Upset there, absolutely popping off. Cabochard in that top lane, he was fantastic for Vitality, going up against Bwipo and Soaz, the 2 Fnatic top laners from last year. He won both of those matchups. Xerxes was absolutely insane on the jungle Karthus, which has taken over pretty much everywhere. And Caps, you might be putting him here every week.
Yeah, get used to seeing Caps there. That mid laner. Hey, it's not going to be at least it's Perk's smug face there in the mid lane. It's going to be Caps now representing G2 there. But hey, you got to cue in here, of course, on Upset, that 35 KDA. Totally popping off here. And of course, you can't do it all alone as an ADC. You gotta have your support helping you out. And Ignar making an impact coming back from the LCK. This was a week where you started to see a little bit more of that Misfits Ignar that we had come to love and know in EU.
He's already matched or might have even surpassed his win total from BBQ in the summer split.
Oh,
3-1 now on
times.
Schalke. I believe they finished with 2. But yeah, Schalke, that bottom lane is looking rock solid. Upset, looking like the new Reckless with Fnatic struggling so mightily. Coming up after the break, we're going over to the LCK, who is the second best team in Korea, because we know that the very best is, of course, Griffin, and it's not even close. Hello, hey, how, and howdy. Welcome to League Unlock. Eric and Mark with you guys today. The LCK Week 2 was... it was booming. There was a lot of action, some upsets you could say, but I don't really know what an upset is in the LCK right now. The only thing I can say definitively is an upset is whenever Griffin loses. Other than that, I don't know what's going on, but SKT took on Damwon, and that was kind of a battle for who's right behind Griffin, rivaling them for one of the top teams in the LCK. A bit of a revenge game from the Kespa Cup, and SKT did get their vengeance back from being ousted early by them at that event.
And I think when you're talking about this matchup between SKT and Damwon Gaming, this is really that matchup, yeah, for who is the second best team here right behind Griffin, because no doubt you're crazy. You are, I don't know, you're playing Fortnite if you're thinking that Griffin is not the #1 team in the LCK. They are absolutely, without a doubt,
you're
top
bus, man.
Hey, I mean, come on. Ninja's got to step it up here. But when you're getting right back here into this, talking about the LCK here, and this SKT Damwon Gaming matchup, yes, these are the teams that have shown us that they are the second best, but we have seen little signs of weaknesses or miscommunications from both of these rosters that they need to prove that they are better than Griffin later on here. We have to give Griffin that early head start in how much they've shown us here. But this was a fantastic matchup that you did not want to miss out on here. And hey, SKT was certainly pushed again all the way into their mental to find a way to pull out this series victory.
Yeah, this time they actually win a best-of-3 series. And that last game, the way it ended, that was almost Griffin-esque or old SKT, where you just don't stop one team fight. Even you're close to breaking down their base, one team fight, boom, game's over.
Oh yeah, game found itself in a bit of a lull there, kind of in that mid stage where they're just not powerful enough to really take the objectives that they wanted to there. And then finally, they get that window of opportunity. And as soon as that window opens there, it is full steam ahead right to the Nexus. SKT did not wait, and they took their chance.
Both wins, Faker on Galio. New era, new roster, new year. It's still just Faker picks Galio and wins.
Hey, I gotta say though, new era, new roster, new jungler. Clid actually looks really great
fantastic
here. It's been a lot better than watching Blank's performances last year.
Ah, poor Blank. I hope he finds another team soon. But we talked about SKT and Damwon. Mark saying the battle for the second best team in the LCK. But what about our boys from Sandbox? The only other undefeated team besides Griffin. They took down SKT earlier in the week. Are these guys going to be for real? They're 4-0?
I think, hey, when you're talking about for real, Sandbox Gaming is for real a contender for the playoffs. And this is something that we did not really expect heading in towards the LCKs, but you knew that they were just coming up here fresh into the scene, and you didn't think that this roster would have the type of coordination to get it done on the LCK stage, but they're showing us here right now. It doesn't really matter too much about the coordination when the actual pure skill is just there, and we're taking what we get from the other teams and punishing any of their mistakes that they're making here. Sandbox Gaming is doing fantastic about that, but I still think that when you watch their games, there is this level of unpredictability with what's going on for them, that at any moment you know that some of these engages, some of these decisions that they're making could massively backfire for them, and that's as quick as it happens to make yourself one of those first losses here in the LCK.
I mean, they were clearly the weakest of the 3 challenger teams that have come up recently, Damwon and Griffin. They were clearly the weakest out of those, but here they are sitting at 4-0. They do look like legit playoff contenders, and I think they'll still be vying for that spot. Are they going to be sitting top 3 in a couple of weeks? That's a lot harder to say, but for right now, they look like they are the real deal, and one of the main reasons they're 4-0 is because all these other old guard teams are struggling so mightily. We already talked about it in week 1, now in week 2. Gen.G, Afreeca, KT, all 1 and 3. There's no chance all 3 of them are making playoffs. Do you have faith in any of them getting out and making playoffs? Because it's going to be hard.
It's crazy to say this here. I got to sell all stock on Gen.G at this point because I think that
they beat Jin Air.
Yeah, well, okay, you beat Jin Air.
That was a bad series, by the way.
But I'm thinking here, you got to have, if you're having any faith on these rosters getting it back together, I guess you could say maybe KT, maybe Afreeca Freaks here. KT, you got to believe that Smeb, Score, and BDD at some point are just purely going to steal games for you, given how strong they can be and how, hey, if that trio starts to get it going, I don't care who your bottom lane is, you should be finding some victories here in the LCK. And then when you're looking at the likes of Afreeca Freaks, I think they've shown us a little bit of creativity here with their roster and some of these drafting decisions that they've made, and they have found ways to make it work and pick up victories here with that. So I think that is an important thing to think about.
How long can they keep that going, though?
Oh, hey. As long as Riot...
Spirit's got six champs he can play.
As long as that Riot Balance team is doing the Bird Box Challenge, I got no doubts that Afreeca Freaks will stay in a way to try and make these creative compositions work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not fully sure. I don't think anyone is what's going on with aiming or the Afreeca Freaks, but I mean, I don't think they can keep this roster in playoff contention if they're running Spirit in the bottom lane all the time. People are going to figure out those strategies, and for KT, I'm worried we're going to be seeing BDD stuck in ELO hell, which is not something I thought we would be seeing this year, but the new guns are coming. Sandbox 4-0. If they keep playing okay, they might be getting into the playoffs. Let's look at these standout performers, the big boys from week 2 in the LCK. And talking Sandbox, one of their best performers from the week that was Summit in that top lane. He used to be a sub on the Afreeca Freaks. He's playing a lot of carries. He was downright dunking people on Darius this weekend. He looked great in the top lane, and you basically can't pick Tarzan and Chovy or pick against them when it's coming to OP performers. That KDA of 44 in week 2 is actually worse than his whole year. 84 KDA mark. He has a KDA of 84.
This 18-year-old is insane. Chovy, man.
It looks like a typo anytime you see it.
It's nuts, man, because every time anyone's even talking, even everyone's talking now about Akali and the performances that Akali you're able to have on Akali, people are like, oh, that's a Chovy-esque type of performance. It's no longer about looking like Faker out here. It's about looking like Chovy. Chovy has absolutely splashed onto the scene here with these incredible performances here. And hey, 44 KDA in week 2. You got to be the performer of the week.
Yeah, you're hard-pressed to go against that. Tarzan was fantastic as well. Then we had Deft, who was carrying Kingzone to a 2-0 record, and we thought he would be the successor to Teddy on a scrub team and just carrying them, but they're actually getting wins.
Hey,
Kingzone's actually winning.
Hey, it's not like Teddy wasn't able to pull out some wins, some win magic here for Jin Air before. So hey, shout-outs to Deft putting on the carry pants.
Shout-outs to Deft. That's all the time today for League Unlocked. Eric and Mark with you guys. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.